We are very excited and grateful to have Rahima Ritenbaugh with us today. Rahima Cheryl Ritenbaugh completed the Jaffe Institute 3-year program in 2004 and received her master's in spiritual and medical healing from the University of Spiritual Healing and Sufism in 2008. She has served on the board of directors of the University of Spiritual Healing and Sufism and of the Shafiyy Institute. She's been active in the Tucson Shadhiliyya community and the Portland community, and in 2018, she joined the Minnesota community. She has run Rumi groups in Oregon and recently completed an 8-week class on Rumi and the Mystical Poets, an introduction to Sufism, for the First Universalist Church in Minneapolis. Today, she draws from that material for this presentation. Her teaching today is Encountering Rumi After Walking on the Sufi Path. Rahima, welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Greetings, folks. I realized that I had spent a lot of time talking about Rumi to non-Sufis, and that the insights would be different if I were sharing them with my fellow travelers on the path. And so that's why I decided to offer this class to all of you. I remember when I was first on the path, CD was sort of discouraging us from getting too involved with Rumi or getting too much out into the ecstatic poetry. And I didn't understand it at the time, and I sort of said, okay, fine, and put my attention on what CD was teaching us, which was totally beautiful. And occasionally touched it along the way, but I didn't really dive down. And then when I started talking to people who weren't Sufis, turned out that it was material to use that was so totally accessible, and people all knew about it, and they knew who Rumi was. And so it was sort of an easy way to move forward. But as I was putting the material together for this class at the First Universalist Church, which considers Rumi one of its saints, by the way, I realized that I was relating to it in a different way than I had been maybe in past years. And so what I really offer us to encounter these poets is that they're really fellow travelers on the path. And now, after we've been walking for a while, a little while, a long while, depending on who we are, we can recognize them as people who are traveling through some of the same things we are. And I think the danger of us being attracted to think that they're where we're looking is less. And we realize that they're just people standing there pointing. And sometimes it's like, oh, I felt that. Oh, I understand that. Or, oh, I needed to hear that. So for people who are maybe alone in their community, don't have a community around them, and want to feel like there are other people out there across history who have walked this path as well, I invite you to come back and taste with some of the poets. So what I'd like to start with is the Fatiha, because all of the poets that I'm going to be using today, and it's more than just Rumi, are all Muslims. They would have all begun their devotions with the Fatiha. They would have done it probably more than 30 times a day. It would be a deep part of them. But as we do today, let's just really feel into what it's bringing us and what it is saying. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Amen. Oh, beloved Lord, join us on this call. Let us all of our hearts, feel open to you. Let us know your presence, which is always nearer to us than our judgment. So one of the things I particularly noticed as I was getting ready to teach to students who weren't Sufis, and as I learned about the different poets, Rumi, that we'll be listening to a bit, Hafiz, Rabia, I realized how all of them had been crushed. Some had chosen the crushing. For others, it had just arrived. For Rabia, her life was extremely difficult before she was released from her slavery and could follow the light. For Rumi, his life had really been quite difficult through his childhood as they moved around and the Mongols were entering their territory, they were thrown out. It was also a time when fundamentalism was coming in and out of Islam. And so sometimes they were persona non grata and sometimes they were welcome. So they had their own rough spots. And certainly although meeting Shams was the high point of his life, for a while losing Shams was the crushing point of his life. So he knew crushing. Hafiz also lived slightly later and in Persia, but he lived at a time when fundamentalists were coming in periodically, and all of the people who were Sufis had to go into hiding or leave town. And then the scene would change and it would be okay again, and he could come back in and he could be visible. And throughout this whole time, he was trying to walk the path, and he gave himself trials of 40 days of being in devotion in a small area the first time, and 40 days of living inside a small circle the second time, because he wanted to find God. He did, but he didn't do that without walking through a lot. So it really struck me that in this walking this path, we encounter difficulty. And we stand with our fellow travelers who also encounter difficulty. And in visiting with these poets, they also know difficulty. It is part of the path. So to just keep that in mind as we go. And this is one of the reasons that they can be companions on the way. So what I'd like to do with these poems is that for each of them, I'll read it through once so you sort of know where it's going and take a brief pause. And then I'll read it through again, and then we'll spend some time in silence. On the second reading, now that you know where it's going, I really invite you to drop into feeling it, to quit thinking about the words and feel what that image feels like. Feel into each part of that image, because that is the state that the poet was in when he or she wrote it. And some of these are a little bit deep, and some of these are a bit frivolous. But I think the same thing holds, that we can feel that state, and we can know something about ourselves and our God in that process. So the first set of poems that I'm going to read are all in one way or another about the presence and feeling the presence. And the first few are from Rumi, and I'll let you know when we switch poets. You are there, I am here. Worlds separate us. Death's angels, the void of space. Yet I say your name, and waves of light wash to me silently from your heart. You are there, I am here. Worlds separate us. Death's angels, the void of space. Yet I say your name, and waves of light wash to me silently from your heart. So this human experience of feeling separate from God, and then in our turning, feeling His presence. This connects us across more than 1,000 years of travelers on this path. This we have now is not imagination. This is not grief or joy, not a judging state or an elation or sadness. Those all come and go. This is the presence that doesn't. This we have now is not imagination. This is not grief or joy, not a judging state or an elation or a sadness. Those all come and go. This is the presence that doesn't. So this is how this poetry can be a companion in our walking and bring us back to the presence. The wine of divine grace is limitless. All limits come only from the faults of the cup. Moonlight floods the whole sky from horizon to horizon. How much it can fill your room depends on its windows. Grant a great dignity, my friend, to the cup of your life. Love has designed it to hold His eternal one. The wine of divine grace is limitless. All limits come only from the faults of the cup. Moonlight floods the whole sky from horizon to horizon. How much it can fill your room depends on its windows. Grant a great dignity, my friend, to the cup of your life. Love has designed it to hold His eternal one. The notion of the cup in our life that holds the divine presence shows up in different ways. One way that it shows up is this way. When we think of the faults of the cup is cracked or broken, then in this image the presence can leak out. We can't hold so much. But there's another set of images that are that the cracks in the cup are what allows the light to pour in. So somewhere between these images, we get this sense of wanting our cup to get bigger and bigger, to allow it to hold more and more and more. And yet to be solid enough for that to not just drain out the bottom. So the same image ends up being kind of about two different things. You don't want your cup to be cracked on one hand. If it's too small, you want to break it because it can't hold it. So maybe some of what we go through is the breaking of our cup to allow us to get a bigger one. And then when we hit the limits of that cup, it's going to break again. Might not be fun. Might feel really terrible. And we'll probably come out the other side with a bigger container. These are the images that kind of float through. So what happens when your cup is breaking, right? That isn't necessarily, it doesn't feel good, and the poets are aware of that as well. They've been there. You know, I'm hunting for the one I want to share from Hafiz. He's thinking about that bad day, and he says, just sit there right now. Don't do a thing, just rest. For your separation from God is the hardest work in this world. Let me bring you trays of food and something that you like to drink. You can use my soft words as a cushion for your head. Just sit there right now. Don't do a thing, just rest. For your separation from God is the hardest work in this world. Let me bring you trays of food and something that you like to drink. You can use my soft words as a cushion for your head. So when our cup is breaking, to get bigger, we know in these poets we have companions who have walked this way. And Rumi offers us ways to deal with it in a pretty well-known poem called The Guest House. And many of you may know it. But this poem really is, more than these others, a guide for our walking. This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as the guide from beyond. Just sinking deeper into this one. This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And as we sit with this, feel into encountering this new unwelcome event with the Rahman. La ilaha illallah. Alhamdulillah. Al-Shukr. Think about those times when something very unwelcome turned out to be a blessing. I have certainly said, if I had only known at the beginning how this was going to turn out, I would have looked at it differently. Yet Rumi is inviting us to look at it by thanking God from the beginning. This was the teaching that we got from Abdul Haq when he was here. And there were moments when Abdul Haq felt like he was channeling Rumi, so that's who he was. And Rumi writes further, if God said, Rumi, pay homage to everything that has helped you enter my arms, there would not be one experience of my life, not one thought, not one feeling, not any act I would not bow to. Let's all feel into our lives as I read this again. If God said, Rumi, pay homage to everything that has helped you enter my arms, there would not be one experience of my life, not one thought, not one feeling, not any act I would not bow to. Those places that are still rough, that's where our walking is. That's where healing is. That's where opportunity is for us. That's an impossible thought when you start on this path. And it becomes more and more true farther we walk. And the people you meet, and what you discover they've walked through, Rumi is a traveler. He traveled all the way. He can be pointing the way for us. Siddhi is our guide. Siddhi is the one that we follow, who teaches us what to do and how to walk. But when we encounter these poets, we know we're not alone. We have fellows on the trail throughout the last 1400 years at least. So at the end, I want to open it up for comments from all of this, but I think it's better to just sort of stay in it. So if you want to make a comment, remember it, we'll come back. I have 3 poems that I want to kind of finish with. Clearly, I have a lot more poems in my lap than the ones that we're going to read. But, let's see. I lied. I have some more poems to read before we get to the end. This is from Rabia. Would you come if someone called you by the wrong name? I wept because for years he did not enter my arms. Then one night I was told a secret. Perhaps the name you call God is not really his. Maybe it's just an alias. I thought about this and came up with a pet name for my beloved. I never mention it to others. All I can say is, it works. So as I read this again, I invite you all to think about the experience of qualities. When now we're speaking to God in a whole variety of his names, not just the one big name. Would you come if someone called you by the wrong name? I wept because for years he did not enter my arms. Then one night I was told a secret. Perhaps the name you call God is not really his. Maybe it's just an alias. I thought about this and came up with a pet name for my beloved I never mentioned to others. All I can say is, it works. So let us all recognize as we sink into this space with Rabia, who is Sidi's favorite. That our God is an intimate friend. There is not a right way to this intimacy. There's only opening our heart and calling in the way that speaks to each of us in our deepest place. And also from Rabia. One day, he did not leave after kissing me. So I'd like to go back to Rumi for a moment then, and sort of wrapping up. And come back to poems that I heard a long time ago. That I have recordings of David Wilcock singing, for those of you who know David Wilcock. But at this point in my walking, they've started to mean something different to me. Beyond our ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. So rather than looking at this from the outside of ourselves, looking for that place, let's instead step in and go into that place beyond our ideas of right doing and wrong doing, and allow ourselves to step into. There's another poem that we also know pretty well that's also been sung by David Wilcox. But I'll suggest after I read it that there's another way to hear it. And I want to say to you all, I'm not giving you the only ways to hear these. It just may be opening the door to more interpretation. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. So that poem is an ode to the value of the early morning prayer in our path. And as a person who doesn't do well with early morning prayer, this is one I liked a lot, but I didn't live it. At this time, when I read it for this class, I realized that maybe this isn't just about the dawn. Maybe this is really asking us to live in this place. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People, travelers on this path with you, are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds meet. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. The door does not close when the sun rises. It's open whenever we open it. And I want to leave you with a poem by Hafiz. I am a hole in a flute that the Christ's breath moves through. Listen to this music. Now I invite you to feel what it means. Feel in your body what it means to be this whole. I am a hole in a flute that the Christ's breath moves through. Listen to this music. For me, this means that I have a note, a single note, that I must show up for, so that it can be played as part of the divine music. No one else can be that note. And yet, if that hole didn't have a ring around it, it wouldn't be the note. So it is constrained. I'm part of a flute. I'm part of a community. I don't make music if I'm not part of it. And where's the music? There's no flute. And those images can go on. So these poets are all walking the same path we are. These states that they're touching, these stations that they're living in perhaps, these are ones that we all touch. We may not live there. Some days we might live there more than others. Some experiences might open them to us more than others. But they're all friends on the path. And if you're feeling alone, like you don't have anybody to talk to about it, know that the crushing and the presence and the joy, these are all things that have been known to others. We're in a safe place. We're on a wonderful path. And Hafiz, Rumi, Rabia, Veer are all people who can join you there. In that field between right doing and wrong. So Pat, would you open it up for comments?
The floor is open. If anybody would like to ask a question or make a comment, just unmute yourself, or if you're in the Sufi Center, just talk.
I just walked in when they were reading the poem, an unexpected guest. Sorry I interrupted. It's kind of unexpected, but it's like, for everything bad that happens in life, we learn about the mercy of Allah.
You walked in at exactly the right moment. You are a welcome, unexpected guest.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I thought some bad things happened to me, but I still can say Alhamdulillah. Paths change always in life.
Hafiz has a poem, I believe, or Rumi, about the guy who stomps the grapes. The guy who stomps the grapes has to put things in his ears because the grapes are yelling at him so loud because they don't want to get stomped. But he knows they're turning into wine. We are all turning into wine. And it's hard to know it when you're getting stomped. Sometimes things that feel really hard turn out being really helpful in our lives. Only at that moment, we can't see it. Latifah Joan, would you care to share something on that?
That sometimes things that feel really hard. Well, I'm still going through a process with physical. I really haven't, gotten through it
All the way.
All the way, but I can feel there's an inner changing going on. Connecting to God in a different way and connecting to that presence you're talking about. It's not. And I don't know what it's going to be 5 years from now or 2 months.
A bit more of the story. So to just share few more sentences about Latifah Jones' story. She went through some time of incredible physical pain. What she found during the physical pain was that she was grieving things that she had never taken time to grieve before. And she was going through letting go of those losses and those horrible experiences at the same time that she was in physical pain. And her being started to lighten because that grief was lifted. And in that moment, the pain didn't miraculously go away, click. But good things have come from her. Yeah. That she never anticipated. Never, right? Okay. So I think that's the story. Things happen you didn't anticipate that are good. But in the middle, hard to see.
Yeah. When it's without that, sometimes it's easy to forget the inner side.
Right. Anybody at home, or are we all vacant out there?
Yes.
Okay, we have one here in the room.
Thank you for this. This is lovely. I feel like I'm being asked to be a vessel, be that cup, only the vessel is like to be a container. And it's changed. I feel like it's changed in ways that it's asking you to be. And I'm at what I have been. One of the poems you read was about when you waking up, asking for what you're needing one. I think I have been consciously asking for less craziness in one way or another. And at the same time, I'm being presented with new personalities that are more crazy. I mean, I could write a book for NAMI, or some with some very serious and hurt, and I feel in my heart for them, so anger that they carry, and at the same time, I feel like, God, I can't hold it anymore. I want to go running and screaming out of the room. I need some sanity, which is what brought me here today. But it's like that. It's sort of like, here's a new layer, a new beginning. And yet here are these new guests, new house guests.
So we'd like to channel Abdul Haq for a moment.
Oh, good.
Okay. What I heard him answer to a couple of different questions that were in the same form as the one you asked. What he suggested we ask for is a different response from ourselves. Whatever God is asking for us, how we're being asked to respond, or what we're being asked to learn, rather than for a change in what's coming toward us. So that was, and then to be able to greet, channel him with Evan Sparkle, to greet each thing with Ya Rahman, and to find the beauty in it. sometimes a very hard call.
Sometimes.
He was asked about very difficult circumstances, and that was his response. You would say that sometimes when I'm in a tight spot, not probably as big as you're looking at, but it feels tight and constricting, and I start saying, La ilaha illallah, I can start laughing. Because the thing in the grand scheme of things shrinks down to a sort of small size. And my mind had been making it into something much bigger than it was. So for me, what the message here is saying is, how can I change myself? How can God help me change my own reaction? Yeah. But then that's a place that one can work. That's a place for healing and support and friendship with the poets. We can talk more. That's the place. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Not easy. Possible. Ah, I see a face.
I think we have a question from our audience, Rahima.
She's actually willing to be a face. Hello. Please speak. Do you know who you are? Can you hear me? If so, nod.
She's muted.
She's not speaking.
Deborah, you're unmuted. Did you want to ask a
Okay.
question?
I don't know. Hello, this is Najma,
Okay.
Hey, Najma.
and I'm resting, looking out my window, and it's snowing.
And it's
and it's incredibly beautiful, which wouldn't be necessarily my normal state of being at this point. The rough spot that you're talking about, what has been giving me comfort recently is the idea of, let's see what Allah brings. And that stops me dead in my tracks and quiets everything and allows me to get into that space that you were describing as a gift. And to get beyond the ego or the mind's analysis at face value, which is probably my normal state, it transports me into a vastness that is very healing. And I want to thank you for your beautiful poems. They have transported me.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Who are we looking at on the screen?
I know that Mukmina had unmuted herself and wanted to ask a question. Mukmina, you want to try it again?
I can see you.
Hello. Hello. It's Mina. I was asking, please, if you could please reread the second poem you read. Would that be possible? It's very short. It's very short. Get the last word. Thank you.
Give me a minute here. Find it. I think this was the one. You are there, I hear, here in this place. Worlds separate us, death's angels, the void of space. Yet I say your name, and waves of light wash to me silently from your heart.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So can I get something in before people leave? And that is that if you want to know the source of many of these, although not all of them, there's a book. I don't think Pat can see this, but you can see what it looks like, people. It's called Love Poems from God. And it's by Daniel Ladinsky. And the poets in here, briefly, are Rabia, Francis of Assisi, Rumi, Meister Eckhart, Thomas Aquinas, Hafiz, Catherine of Siena, Kabir, Mira, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, and Tukaram. And you realize in this book that religion we call ourselves doesn't really matter to this state, and that we can all join in. So I would encourage you, if you want a book to own that will keep giving, it would be Love Poems from God by Daniel Ladinsky.
May I ask one thing?
Final question, yes, please.
If you can speak just a little bit more on all of the poems were leading into this place of meeting the unknown and finding a way to say Alhamdulillah. And I'm in a better space right now than I was a few days ago after going to the wellness weekend at the farm. But I lost my mother last summer, and I hope I read the CAT scans wrong, but my dad's having an appointment with the oncologist tomorrow, and it's been hard to even have my own walking, supporting my parents so deeply. And if you can speak a little bit more to the ways, like La ilaha illallah, when we're in those spaces, and things where we may not be able to go into a deep space of remembrance in that moment, and how to catch that thread at a later date. Thank you.
So I'm going to go sideways a bit to your question. But when I taught this class at the First Universalist Church, during the 8 weeks, a woman there, her mother had an accident and a month later died. Another man had his father in hospice. A woman there was dealing with cancer and chemotherapy. And another woman had just lost her mother. So death was very much present in that class. And everyone was noticing from this context and speaking to the process they observed in their parents, of their parents, whether over a long time or crunched into a very short time, of their parents letting go of the things that didn't matter, of letting go of old angers, of letting go of old criticisms, of letting go and letting the light come through them. And perhaps when we're dealing with the mortality of our parents, the message is about us being able to be with them more than it's about us per se. It's like, how can we be with them? How can we be present to what they're going through? And how can that letting go that they're having teach us what Sidi always said, which was die before you die? That is this path. And the death of a loved one, especially a situation where we can be with them and we can walk it with them, And we can be there. I can tell stories about my mother, but I won't go there now. But there's something so informative, that sounds so cold. It teaches us so deeply. It teaches our heart what it is to be human and what it is to pass. And I think that's our learning when we're walking with our parents. And oh, yes, we don't want to lose them. Alhamdulillah, we don't want to lose them. But, you know, that's a normal part of us to observe, to be with, that we don't want to lose them. But instead of worrying about losing them at the beginning, we can just be with them and let ourselves learn what there is to learn. For children, it can be difficult because we get all caught up. We're the translators to the doctors. We have to be the ones who talk to the medical system. We get caught up in all these things. And if among all of that stuff, we can take some moments to be really, really present to them. Certainly in my parents' deaths, I was more caught up than I would be now if I could go and do it again. The people in our class, they were having the opportunity and talking about those moments of really seeing what it meant to be, what it was like to be at the end of your life and letting go of things. And all we could think of in the room was that we had all been admonished to die before you die. This is what it means. That's what I learned about it. I don't know if that works for other people, but that's what I came away with. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. It does. It's a complicated grieving, and I won't get into that. And I was actually helping my dad through stage 4 colon cancer for a year and a half before she passed. And I've been aware, and other friends in the path have said, alhamdulillah, you spent so much time with your father. And we got so close. I stayed in the room with him, helped him go to the bathroom after surgery. So there was this bond to help him navigate after losing her. And I am eternally grateful for that, and eternally grateful that I was able to readjust my life to show up for both of them in that. And when you said the strange places of their humanity when they pass, I was the only person with my mother other than the nurse the last 5 hours of her life. And being sensitive, the nurse told me certain things, and I was glad because I could actually feel the electricity of her heart working harder until she died. And so it was an incredibly holy place to be, and devastating when other people walked in and broke that tender veil. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Rahima, you want to leave us with one last poem before we go today?
Know the true nature of your beloved. In his loving eyes, your every thought, word, and movement is always, always beautiful. Know the true nature of your beloved. In his loving eyes, your every thought, word, and movement is always, always beautiful.
Thank you, Rahima, for allowing us to take the journey today with these wonderful poets and fellow travelers on the Sufi way. We really appreciate it, and it's been a marvelous time spent together.
It's been wonderful for me. So thank you.